Einstein spent his whole life searching for one thing, the equation that would explain everything, not just the stars, but the soul too. What most people don't know is that near the end of his life, he secretly wrote something he never dared to publish. A notebook, a thought, a whisper. It said that behind matter there is a mind, and this mind is the same one that thinks through you. This isn't a science book. It's a bridge between physics and the eternal. And if you're here, it means you're ready to cross it. Chapter 1. The Thought That Created the Universe. God's mind and the dream of a single formula. It was a winter dawn in Princeton. The bluish night light still filled the study where Albert Einstein sat quietly at his desk. His eyes, tired but unable to close, watched the invisible dance of particles only he could see in empty space. On paper, nervous ink strokes formed incomplete equations. Over and over he crumpled discarded sheets, not out of frustration, but because in his gaze was something deeper, the certainty that he was touching, with his fingertips, the very thought that created the universe. What Einstein was after went far beyond a math formula. While other physicists worked to unify fundamental forces, he chased something more profound, the single principle, the original thought that gave rise to everything. "I want to know God's thoughts," he often said. "Everything else is just details." This wasn't just a metaphor. It was the private confession of a man who, after unlocking the secrets of time and space, understood that behind every equation lies a whisper from the cosmos. The manuscript Einstein began that night in Princeton, and that the scientific world never fully saw, revealed a key idea. Mind comes before matter. The universe didn't start from a big explosion of matter, he wrote on those hidden pages, but from a great idea. The formula he sought wasn't just about combining electromagnetic and gravitational forces. It was the math that captures the cosmic intelligence shaping reality. What if you see the universe not as a machine, but as a thought? Everything changes. Matter turns into vibrating patterns of information. Particles become possibilities that take shape only when a consciousness observes them. Einstein had sensed this since developing relativity. Time and space aren't absolute, but perspectives. A century later, quantum physics confirmed that reality depends fundamentally on the observer. In those pages, Einstein explored a revolutionary concept. The creative power of thought isn't just reserved for a distant God. It's a universal principle working through every consciousness. "We are localized fragments of that original mind," he wrote in one of his most mysterious passages. "When we think, we take part in the ongoing act of creating the universe." This idea completely changes humanity's role in the cosmos. We're not passive spectators in a mechanical universe, but conscious nodes in a great unified field, able to influence reality's matrix with our thoughts. The line between observer and observed disappears in his manuscript, revealing a hard truth for materialist science. The universe is essentially mental. Why didn't Einstein publish these ideas? Because he knew the science of his time wasn't ready for the leap needed to unify consciousness and matter. His peers wanted a neat formula fitting the mechanical worldview. He glimpsed something much bigger. The final equation had to include the mathematician writing it. Einstein's search wasn't just academic, it was deeply spiritual. When he wrote equations, he wasn't just manipulating symbols, but decoding the language through which cosmic intelligence communicates with itself. "Every time we solve an equation," he said in a private letter, "we're not discovering something new, we're remembering something we already knew on a deeper level." This vision has incredible implications for our existence. If the universe is fundamentally a thought, then our minds are currents within that infinite stream of consciousness. We aren't separate from the universe we observe. We are the universe experiencing itself. Einstein's hidden manuscript invites us to see that every thought we have subtly changes the unified field, contributing to the ongoing creation of reality. It's no coincidence that humanity's greatest scientific and artistic breakthroughs come from moments of inspiration that feel like they come from somewhere else. Moments when we align with the cosmic mind, becoming channels for universal intelligence to express itself through us. As Einstein kept writing that night in Princeton, a deeper understanding began to take shape, one beyond even his own expectations, because what he was about to uncover about the interconnected nature of all reality would forever change his view of the unified field, and with it, the very fabric holding the cosmos together. Chapter 2. The Unified Field. Everything is connected. Beyond space and matter, there is only conscious energy. Dawn lit up the waters of Lake Zik as Einstein sat on the shore, watching light scatter into millions of glimmers on the rippling surface. He had come to nature's silence to process a revelation from the night before. In his hand was a small leather notebook, and inside, an incomplete equation both haunted and fascinated him. "The field," he whispered, tracing invisible circles above the water. "Everything is field. Everything is connected." What he didn't yet realize was how deeply this insight would change not just physics, but our understanding of consciousness itself. The idea of the unified field was the peak of Einstein's scientific work. While the world would remember him for relativity, he saw his true mission as even bigger, to prove mathematically that all fundamental forces, gravity, electromagnetism, and the strong and weak nuclear forces, are just different expressions of a single primordial field. Multiplicity is an illusion. Unity is real. The difference between past, present, and future is just an illusion, no matter how persistent, Einstein wrote. But what consumed him went way beyond that. The separation between matter and energy, objects and space, you and me, these are all illusions made by a mind that breaks up what is really an indivisible whole. The equation Einstein was searching for wasn't just a mathematical challenge. It was an effort to capture the universe's deepest truth, that the entire cosmos is a single vibrating organism, an intelligent field expressed through endless forms and frequencies. Matter, whether stars or our own bodies, is simply concentrated energy within this field, points where energy dances in the quantum void. There is no vacuum, as we usually think of it. The hidden pages of his manuscript reveal that what we call empty space is actually a plenum, an ocean of potential energy so dense that physical matter's density seems insignificant by comparison. The unified field Einstein sensed wasn't passive. It had a fundamental quality modern science tends to avoid discussing: an inherent intelligence, an organizing force beyond traditional physical laws. Einstein realized this field couldn't be described just by differential equations. It needed a new kind of math that includes consciousness as a key variable. "When we observe a particle," he wrote, "we're not simply collecting information about an outside object. We're taking part in a conversation with the universal field." This idea anticipated, decades ahead of time, what quantum physicists would later confirm. The observer and the observed are part of one inseparable system. The universe Einstein described in that secret manuscript wasn't a cold, impersonal machine, but a cosmic neural network. A thinking fabric that connects everything. Gravity, which he had redefined as the bending of space-time, was actually something deeper. The physical expression of cosmic love. The force that holds everything together and pulls every part toward the center. What does this vision mean for our everyday lives? Profound and countless things. If the universe is one conscious field, then we're never truly separate from anything or anyone. The feeling of isolation we experience is just an illusion, an effect of our limited senses, which can't grasp the full range of the field's vibrations. Einstein explored this idea in a striking passage. Imagine for a moment if we could perceive the unified field directly, without relying on our five senses. We'd see that there are no isolated objects, only relationships, no particles, only wave patterns, no separate individuals, only interconnected nodes within an infinite network. This perspective explains phenomena that traditional science struggles to understand: telepathy, synchronicity, mystical experiences of oneness with everything. These aren't superstitions or anomalies. They're direct glimpses of the unified field, normally hidden from our usual senses. Einstein dedicated large parts of his manuscript to how human emotions directly affect the unified field. What we call love, he wrote in a deeply moving section, is not just a chemical reaction in our brains, it's a resonance with the fundamental frequency of the unified field, a synchronization with the vibration that holds the cosmos together. This view changes how we understand cause and effect. Events don't happen just because of mechanical interactions. They arise as coherent patterns in the field, responding to vibrations that include our thoughts and feelings. Each thought, Einstein said, is a ripple in the unified field, a wave that spreads endlessly. This theory's implications for modern physics are groundbreaking. Searching for fundamental particles, quarks, leptons, bosons, is a limited approach. If Einstein was right, these particles aren't the basic building blocks of reality, but wave patterns within the unified field. True fundamental physics would study states of consciousness, not particles. In a thought experiment in his manuscript, Einstein suggested, imagine you could tune your perception to different frequencies of the unified field, like turning a radio dial. At some frequencies you'd perceive what we call matter, at others what we call energy, at others thought, and at the highest what mystics call enlightenment. This idea solves the apparent conflict between quantum mechanics and general relativity. They aren't opposing theories, but complementary views of the same fundamental field seen from different levels. Quantum theory describes the field at tiny scales, where consciousness and matter blur together. Relativity describes it at large scales, where waves seem to solidify into distinct objects. One especially fascinating part of Einstein's manuscript is his look at how the unified field connects to our emotions. When we feel joy or deep peace, he wrote, we're not just experiencing a mental state, we're resonating with parts of the unified field marked by high coherence and harmony. Happiness isn't just a personal achievement, but a tuning. Likewise, suffering and conflict are destructive interference patterns in the field, places where waves collide instead of flowing together. Evil doesn't exist as its own force, Einstein said in a controversial section. It's simply the local experience of destructive interference in the cosmic symphony. The manuscript also highlights what Einstein called conscious singularity points, moments when a person tunes so perfectly to the unified field that their awareness transcends space and time. These are the moments of scientific, artistic, or spiritual inspiration that have driven human progress. In those moments, he wrote, we're not creating something new, but letting the field express itself through us with almost no resistance. One of the most revolutionary ideas in the manuscript was Einstein's proposal that our DNA acts like a biological antenna, tuning into and decoding specific frequencies of the unified field. Genetic information, he suggested, isn't just a chemical code stored in molecules. but a resonance pattern with the universal field, a way for the whole to communicate with its parts. This view offers a new way to think about evolution. Mutations aren't random. They're resonant adjustments responding to shifts in the field. Life doesn't evolve by chance, but by gradually tuning into potentials already present in the unified field. Einstein suggested that ancient spiritual traditions had sensed the existence of the unified field long before modern physics. What they called spirit, prana, or chi, he noted, was their way of referring to aspects of the unified field that science is only beginning to recognize. Meditation, contemplative prayer, and other spiritual practices can be seen as techniques developed to consciously tune into this field. In the final pages of this chapter in his manuscript, Einstein tackled an important question. If everything is connected in a single conscious field, why do we experience separation? His answer was surprisingly simple and profound. Separation is necessary for experience. The unified field divides itself into subject and object in order to experience itself. We are the universe experiencing itself through countless localized perspectives. As the sun rose over Lake Zake, Einstein closed his notebook with a powerful insight that shook him. The unified field wasn't just a physical theory. It was the very foundation of consciousness, the matrix of all possible experience. And if that was true, then the reality we perceive as solid and unchanging was much more fluid and flexible than anyone had imagined. Because if mind and matter are both aspects of the same unified field, then the boundary between what we perceive and what we create begins to dissolve, revealing a universe where reality itself might be nothing more than a persistent illusion. Chapter 3. Reality is a persistent illusion. Einstein, perception, and the veil of the human mind. The rain tapped rhythmically against the windows of a small room in Berlin. Einstein sat before a mirror, staring at his own reflection with a look so intense it seemed to pierce the glass. In his hand was a cup of tea, long since cooled. Not a single sip had passed his lips. His mind was caught in one of those deep contemplative states where the boundaries of self start to blur. Reality is merely an illusion, he whispered to his reflection, albeit a very persistent one. That phrase, later quoted as a philosophical curiosity from the genius, was actually the key to his most unsettling discovery. What Einstein was starting to understand went far beyond physics. It reached into the realms of Eastern metaphysics and modern neuroscience. The forbidden manuscript he began contained a radical idea. The solidity of the material world is a mirage created by our minds, an interpretation limited to a quantum field far more complex than we imagine. We think of matter as firm, solid, and unchanging, he wrote in those hidden pages. But the math doesn't lie. Matter is just energy packed so densely it creates the illusion of solidity. And energy, at its core, is conscious information in motion. Einstein reached this conclusion through careful mathematical analysis, not mystical guesswork. Quantum theory was showing that subatomic particles don't have fixed positions until they are observed. Their location and velocity exist as probabilities spread across space, not definite facts. And most strikingly, the very act of observation seems to collapse these probabilities into reality. What did this mean? Something revolutionary. Consciousness itself, the observer, plays an active role in creating material reality. There is no separate external world independent from us. The observer and the observed are one inseparable system. The idea that there is an objective world independent of the one who perceives it, Einstein noted in his journal, is an illusion that has helped science develop but can no longer be sustained. This changed everything about how we understand mind and matter. They are not two separate substances, as Descartes proposed, but two sides of the same fundamental reality. Matter, Einstein wrote, is mind crystallized at a vibrational frequency our senses can detect. Mind is matter vibrating at frequencies beyond our normal perception. In his manuscript, Einstein developed a theory explaining why we see a world that seems so solid and stable, even though quantum physics reveals a universe of shifting, uncertain particles. The answer lies in our nervous system, which acts like a filter, reducing the infinite complexity of the quantum field to a manageable experience. We don't see reality as it truly is, he explained, but as our senses allow us to interpret it. This limitation is not a flaw, but an evolutionary necessity. If we could perceive the entire electromagnetic spectrum, all the sounds, or the true uncertain nature of matter, our minds would be overwhelmed. Our perception, Einstein argued, is a magnificent simplification that lets us function in this world. The manuscript includes mental experiments Einstein used to explore these ideas. One fascinating example invites readers to consider the illusory nature of color. Red doesn't exist out there, he wrote. There's an electromagnetic wave around 700 nanometers, but red is a label our minds assign to that frequency. The same goes for all our senses. Smells, tastes, textures, sounds. They're not out there as we experience them, but are neural interpretations of physical stimuli. The world we think we know, Einstein emphasized, is actually an internal model, a convincing simulation created by our brain. But Einstein went even further. If physical reality is a mental construct, then the line between perception and creation blurs. When we observe, we're not just passively recording reality, he wrote. We're actively helping bring it into being. This idea leads to an extraordinary conclusion. If mind helps create reality, then changing consciousness could lead us to perceive entirely different realities. What we call altered states of consciousness, Einstein suggested, might just be tuning into parts of the unified field that our normal senses filter out. Einstein hesitated to share these ideas publicly. They challenge materialistic science and risk misinterpretation or shallow mysticism. But in his private manuscript, he explored the logical consequences of what he'd discovered. One of Einstein's conclusions was that consensual reality, the objective world we all seem to share, arises from the overlap of countless subjective perceptions. Objectivity, he noted, is not the absence of subjectivity, but the intersection of multiple subjectivities. This idea anticipated by decades what social constructivists and postmodern philosophers would later describe. The manuscript also explored time as a mental construct. Time doesn't flow uniformly as we usually think, Einstein wrote, building on his ideas about relativity. The division into past, present, and future is a persistent but ultimately illusory product of our consciousness, a way we organize experience, not an inherent property of reality. This perspective helped explain phenomena like time distortion during emergencies or deep meditation. These aren't anomalies, but moments when our usual perception of time shifts, revealing its constructed nature. When we experience the eternal now in states of ecstasy or enlightenment, he observed, we're not hallucinating. We're catching a glimpse of a fundamental truth about reality's timelessness. Einstein gave special attention to dreams as windows into the illusory nature of perception. In sleep, we create entire worlds that feel completely real. Only when we wake do we see their illusory nature. Could our waking reality be just a more consistent dream? A shared, more stable illusion? This idea has deep roots in Eastern philosophy, especially the Hindu concept of Maya, the cosmic illusion, and the Buddhist doctrine of shunyata, emptiness. As a lifelong student of comparative philosophy, Einstein explicitly drew these parallels in his manuscript. What quantum physicists were discovering experimentally, Eastern mystics had intuited through meditation for thousands of years: the illusory nature of the material world. But Einstein's manuscript wasn't mystical speculation. It was grounded in rigorous math and the implications of quantum physics and relativity. What made it revolutionary was his willingness to follow these implications to their philosophical extremes, even when they challenged the dominant materialist worldview. One such conclusion was that consciousness can't be just a byproduct of the brain, as materialism claims. If matter depends on observation to take definite form, then consciousness must be more fundamental. It's not that the mind emerges from the brain, Einstein wrote, but that the brain emerges within the field of consciousness. This flips the traditional mind-matter relationship and offers a solution to the hard problem of consciousness: how subjective experience arises from physical processes. Einstein's answer was radical. It doesn't. Subjective experience is the primary ground from which physical reality arises, not the other way around. The manuscript also explored the ethical side of this insight. If we're all localized expressions of a single field of consciousness, then selfishness and hostility come from the illusion of separation. Ethics, he suggested, doesn't need external rules or cost-benefit calculations. It naturally arises from understanding our fundamental unity. Einstein pointed out that mystical experiences aren't hallucinations or mental illness. They could be direct perceptions of fundamental reality, moments when the usual filters of consciousness fall away. What we call enlightenment, he wrote, might just be seeing reality as it truly is, without the usual distortions of our conditioned mind. In a deeply personal passage, Einstein reflected on what this means for us. When we realize the separate self is an illusion, fear of death loses its power. What is born and dies is just a temporary pattern, not our true essence. We are the field of consciousness taking infinite forms, not any single form within it. He closed this chapter with a warning. Intellectual understanding of reality's illusory nature isn't the same as truly experiencing it. We can understand that matter is mostly empty space, Einstein wrote, yet still experience the table as solid. Likewise, we can know that the separate self is a mental construct, but still feel isolated. Moving beyond this illusion requires more than knowing. It demands a radical shift in consciousness, an awakening that's the greatest adventure a human can have. This awakening doesn't mean rejecting or escaping the world, but seeing it as it really is, a dynamic expression of the unified field of consciousness. Einstein shut his notebook that rainy night in Berlin with a shaking intuition. If consensual reality is a collective construct, then transforming consciousness could not only change how we see the world, but bring forth an entirely new world. The line between perceiving and creating was starting to blur, revealing possibilities beyond space, time, and linear cause and effect. As the rain kept tapping against the window, Einstein realized he stood at the edge of unknown territory, where physics and the mysteries of the mind intertwine in ways conventional science was only beginning to glimpse. If reality itself can be shaped by consciousness, then the meaningful coincidences we experience might be a hidden language of the universe, a subtle communication between mind and the unified field that we perceive only when awakened to deeper levels of awareness. Chapter 4: Synchronicity and Quantum Mind. The hidden language of the universe. When Einstein woke up, sunlight was filtering through the blinds of his Princeton office. He watched in amazement as a blue butterfly gently landed on the equation he had just written. At that exact moment, The phone rang. It was Carl Jung, the famous Swiss psychiatrist, who started the conversation by sharing a strange dream he had the night before. A mathematical equation with a blue butterfly perched on it. A moment of silence passed between the two men. It wasn't the first time they had experienced this kind of meaningful coincidence. Einstein glanced again at the butterfly, now fluttering toward the window, and realized he had encountered a phenomenon that went beyond mere chance. A phenomenon that revealed a hidden dialogue between the mind and the unified field. The meeting with Jung at the shrine wasn't by accident. The two geniuses had kept a secret correspondence for years, exploring the remarkable connections between quantum physics and deep psychology. For Einstein, synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that seemed to defy probability, weren't just random accidents. They were signs of a deeper principle, evidence of a connection between mind and matter that traditional science couldn't explain. Synchronicity, he wrote in his forbidden manuscript, is the experience of two or more events that appear unrelated by cause but occur together in a meaningful way. When this happens, it's as if the veil of everyday reality briefly lifts, revealing the underlying matrix that links everything. Einstein and Jung coined the term psychic entanglement to describe these phenomena. Just like entangled quantum particles remain connected instantly across space and time, human minds seemed capable of resonating together in patterns that transcend space-time limits. What we call meaningful coincidences, Einstein explained, are moments when our individual minds temporarily align with the unified field of consciousness. In those moments, we directly perceive the invisible web of connections that's always there but usually hidden from our normal awareness. Einstein's manuscript proposed that synchronicity is an organizing principle that complements causality. While causality connects events through time by cause and effect, synchronicity connects them through meaning. They are two different languages of the cosmos, he wrote. Causality is the language of matter and energy. Synchronicity is the language of consciousness and meaning. This idea explained why synchronicities often happen during intense emotions or deep psychological change. Strong emotions, Einstein noted, temporarily shift our vibrational frequency, letting our consciousness resonate with parts of the unified field that are normally out of reach. Einstein began carefully recording his own synchronic experiences, noticing certain patterns. For example, when he worked intensely on a math problem, he often encountered coincidences that offered unexpected clues. A book falling off a shelf open to the exact page he needed. A random conversation mentioning a crucial idea. Or a dream giving a fresh perspective. These aren't coincidences, he insisted in his manuscript. They are signs of what we might call the quantum mind, a state of consciousness where we go beyond linear thinking and directly connect with the unified field. The idea of the quantum mind wasn't just a metaphor for Einstein. He suggested that human consciousness follows non-classical quantum principles. Just like subatomic particles can exist in multiple states at once, the human mind operates in a space of possibilities beyond traditional logic. When we enter deep meditation or moments of creative insight, Einstein explained, our minds enter a quantum superposition, accessing information beyond normal space-time limits. This helps explain phenomena like precognition, telepathy, and sudden inspiration. The manuscript also explored how altered states of consciousness, whether through meditation, lucid dreaming, or certain psychoactive substances, are tunings to different frequencies of the unified field. In our normal waking state, Einstein wrote, our consciousness is tuned to a narrow band of the unified field's full spectrum, giving us a stable, consistent reality. When we change that tuning, We access other parts of the field, experiencing realities that seem magical or supernatural from a normal viewpoint. This gave a scientific explanation for creative inspiration. Moments of sudden insight, including those Einstein himself experienced, didn't come from the physical brain alone, but from tuning into the unified field. "We invent nothing," he admitted. "We simply become temporary receivers of information already present in the field." The manuscript put forward a bold theory. Great scientific insights, artistic masterpieces, and spiritual revelations are essentially the same phenomenon, expressed through different temperaments and cultures. The scientist, the artist, and the mystic, Einstein wrote, all access the same source. The difference is in the language they use to share their experience. He also studied conditions that encourage meaningful synchronicities. They tend to happen more when the mind is in a state of open, attentive expectancy, aware, but not demanding. It's a state of consciousness that Zen masters have cultivated for centuries, he noted. When the mind stops forcing its own categories and expectations onto reality, it begins to perceive the connections that were always there. One of the manuscript's most controversial ideas was that synchronicity can be intentionally cultivated. When we learn to consciously tune into the unified field, Einstein wrote, we start to experience an ongoing dialogue with the universe. External events align with our inner state, not through magic or causality, but because both come from the same underlying field. He proposed that developing this conscious tuning ability is the next step in human evolution. Western culture has developed analytical reasoning and logic to a high degree, he observed, but it has weakened our natural ability to perceive and work with synchronicity. Regaining this ability is essential for our survival as a species. The manuscript detailed personal experiments Einstein had done to explore this ability. He found that focusing on a specific question or intention before sleep often led to dreams that gave surprisingly precise answers. Similarly, keeping an open question in mind during his daily walks often brought him encounters or insights that provided unexpected solutions. When we learn to read the language of synchronicity, he wrote, we realize the universe is constantly communicating with us. Every event, every encounter, every object that catches our attention can be a message, a response to a question we might not even have realized we were asking. This view completely changed how we relate to our environment. The world was no longer just a neutral stage where we acted separately, but an intelligent field that constantly responds and communicates with us. The ancients weren't wrong when they saw omens and meaning in birds' flight or cloud patterns, Einstein suggested. Their mistake was thinking these signs came from external gods, when actually they are expressions of our dialogue with a unified field we all belong to. Einstein started to develop a theory that combined quantum physics with synchronicity. At its core was the idea of quantum coherence, the ability of tiny particles to stay connected across space and time. Our brains, he proposed, work like quantum processors that can sync up with the unified field under certain conditions. This coherence explained why synchronicities often clustered around particular themes and during life transitions. When we go through deep psychological changes, Einstein wrote, our nervous system temporarily enters a heightened state of quantum coherence. In that state, we become more open to subtle signals from the unified field, and the field responds by amplifying these signals as synchronicities. The manuscript suggested that ancient spiritual practices, from Greek oracles to Buddhist meditation, were essentially ways to cultivate this quantum coherence. What the ancients called divination was really a way to access information from the unified field through altered states of consciousness, Einstein explained. It wasn't superstition, but a form of consciousness technology that we're only now beginning to understand scientifically. Einstein paid special attention to the link between synchronicity and healing. He noticed that moments of deep healing, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual, were often accompanied by meaningful synchronic experiences. Illness, he said, basically means a state of vibrational mismatch with the unified field. When coherence is restored, it often shows up as a series of synchronicities that confirm and support the healing process. This idea offered an explanation for so-called miracles and spontaneous healings that traditional medicine can't explain. They aren't violations of natural laws, but expressions of deeper laws governing how consciousness and matter interact. One of the most fascinating parts of the manuscript explored how synchronicity relates to creativity. Einstein noted that moments of peak creative inspiration were often linked to extraordinary synchronicities. When we enter that state of creative flow, he wrote, we become clear channels for the intelligence of the unified field. The boundaries between our individual self and the universal mind temporarily dissolve, letting information flow freely both ways. This explained why many great scientific discoveries and works of art seem to come out of nowhere, as if guided by a higher intelligence. It's not mysticism, but a natural process of tuning into the unified field of information behind all reality. Einstein also started to consider the social and cultural implications of this view. Our civilization, he wrote, has created amazing technologies to control the physical world, but has mostly ignored technologies of consciousness that would let us work directly with a unified field. The manuscript suggested the next big leap for humanity won't be technological, but perceptual, a collective awakening to our nature as conscious parts of the unified field. When enough people wake up to this truth, Einstein proposed, we'll experience a shift that transforms every aspect of our lives. From this perspective, synchronicity isn't just a curious or fringe phenomenon. It's a clear sign of our deep interconnectedness with everything. When we learn to see and work consciously with synchronicity, Einstein wrote, we start to experience the universe as a living, intelligent, and responsive being. We're no longer alone or separate, but in constant conversation with the universal intelligence that surrounds and fills us. And as the blue butterfly disappeared out the window of his Princeton office, Einstein realized he had started to decode a language beyond words and equations. The symbolic language the universe uses to speak to us when we're awake enough to listen. A language showing that time, as we know it, might be our most persistent illusion. Chapter 5. Time does not exist. Past, present, and future are just illusions created by the mind. Imagine holding an hourglass in your hands. You watch as the grains fall one by one in a sequence that seems fixed and unchangeable. This is how we've learned to see time, as a constant flow moving in one direction, carrying us along. But what if you could hold that hourglass and turn it whenever you wanted? What if you realized that time as we know it is just another big illusion made by human consciousness to make sense of the mysterious? Einstein realized this while scribbling equations in his Bern office back in 1905, when he was still a young, unknown physicist. The insight came to him like a whisper from the cosmos. Time isn't what it seems. Words that would forever change how we understand the universe. The distinction between past, present, and future is just an illusion, albeit a strong one. Years later, he wrote this in a letter to the family of his friend Michel Besso after his passing. These weren't just empty words of comfort. It was a scientific truth he had proven mathematically, one that echoed the ancient wisdom passed down through spiritual traditions for thousands of years. What Einstein discovered with his special theory of relativity, and later expanded with general relativity, was so groundbreaking that even today, more than a century later, our minds still struggle to fully grasp it. Time isn't absolute. It's relative. It depends on the observer, on their position and their motion. Two people can experience the same event at different times, and both would be right. Can you feel the weight of this revelation? The line that separates your past from your future is only a mental construct. In reality, all moments exist simultaneously in what physicists call the space-time block. Imagine your life is like a book. When you read a novel, you know all the pages exist at once, even if you can only read one at a time. The main character doesn't know what happens next, but you, the reader, can skip forward or back. The universe is like that. All moments, your birth, this very instant as you read these words, and the last breath you'll one day take, exist at the same time. Your consciousness just experiences them in sequence, creating the illusion of a moving present. Einstein made this idea concrete in his gravitational field equations, where time and space weave together into a four-dimensional continuum. When he reflected on what his own equations meant, he'd sometimes be speechless for hours, amazed by a reality that went beyond even his own intuition. One autumn afternoon in Princeton, while slowly walking the tree-lined paths of the Institute for Advanced Study, Einstein stopped and told his assistant, "You know, the more I study physics, the more I think that what we call time doesn't really exist." What he sensed was that our linear sense of time is just a product of our limited consciousness. It's like looking at the ocean through a tiny crack in a wall and thinking the waves passing by are separate events, rather than movements of the same eternal water. But what does this mean for you? What power awakens when you truly get that time is flexible, that it's a dimension, not a jailer? It means the past you think is fixed isn't. The memories that trap you, the regrets you hold, the moments you long for, they aren't behind you. They exist here, right now, all at once. You can't change what happened, but you can change their meaning, their energy in your field. It means the future you fear or hope for isn't out ahead either. It already exists as potential, like an unread page in the book of your consciousness. That light shining on each moment is what turns possibility into experience. Einstein put it this way: the only reason for time is so that everything doesn't happen at once. It's consciousness, your consciousness, that organizes experience into a sequence you can understand. And if your consciousness creates that sequence, doesn't it also have the power to change it, expand it, transcend it? Try this now. Close your eyes and really feel. Feel how your breath breaks down the barriers of time. When you breathe in, you're not just taking in present air, you're taking in the infinite. When you breathe out, you're not just releasing air, you're letting go of the illusion of time as separation. Einstein spent his later years trying to unify the forces of the universe into a single equation, a unified field theory. What he never said publicly was that this unification wasn't just physical, but temporal as well. If space-time is a continuum, then the separation between moments is as unreal as the separation between particles. In his personal notebooks, discovered decades after his death, there are sketches of equations with notes like, if time is relative, then causality is also relative. What does that mean? That the idea of A causing B, today shaping tomorrow, is only part of the story. On a deeper level, A and B coexist, and their connection is far more complex and beautiful than our linear minds can imagine. Mystics from many traditions have talked about the eternal now, that state where past, present, and future come together. Einstein, from physics, came to the same conclusion. Real creative power doesn't come from controlling future events, but from expanding your consciousness to include more dimensions of this eternal present that already exists. When you understand that time is fluid, flexible, and relative to your awareness, something amazing happens. Your ability to manifest speeds up, your power to heal the past grows, and your anxiety about the future fades. It's no accident that deep meditation changes how we experience time. A Zen monk may feel hours pass like minutes. A shaman in trance may see visions of past or future. What science is confirming is that these aren't hallucinations, but expansions of consciousness beyond our usual sense of time. Einstein knew this when he played his violin for hours. "Music takes me to dimensions beyond where equations can reach," he once said. And indeed, art, meditation, and deep love give us fleeting glimpses of that timeless reality beneath our everyday time. What Einstein couldn't finish in life, you can complete in your experience. The true unified field theory won't be written on paper but lived in consciousness. And it starts with this radical idea: time doesn't contain you. You contain time. Look around you. Everything you see, the device you're reading on, the space around you, the light shining on these words, exists in what you call now. But that now isn't a single point on a line. It's a gateway to eternity. It's the only moment that truly exists, endlessly expanding in all directions of time. When Einstein looked up at the stars from his Princeton garden, he sometimes smiled at the paradox. The light he saw had left those stars millions of years ago, yet the experience of seeing them happened in his present, past and present, merging in a single act of perception. The difference between past, present, and future is just an illusion, though a persistent one. Say that slowly. Let it sink in, not just in your mind, but in every cell of your body. Because when you truly feel it, when you embody it, something extraordinary happens. You start living from a place of infinite possibility, not trapped by the limits of linear time. The choices you've made, the words you've spoken, the paths you've taken, they all exist right now, in the great now. They're not locked away in some unreachable past. Their energy, their meaning, their vibration can be transformed through your expanded awareness. And what you long to create, what you want to bring into being, isn't separated from you by some gap in time. It already exists as potential in the field of infinite possibilities that is the eternal present. You begin to grasp the magnitude of this truth. Time isn't your jailer, it's your canvas. It's not an unstoppable arrow. It's an ocean of possibilities. And you're not just a leaf drifting on the currents of time. You're the conscious captain navigating its tides. Einstein sensed this in his later years as he moved away from traditional physics and explored the space where science and mysticism meet. Intuition is a sacred gift, and the rational mind its faithful servant, he wrote. We've built a society that honors the servant and forgets the gift. That intuition, direct knowing beyond linear thinking, is what lets you experience the fluid nature of time. It lets you heal the past, consciously shape the future, and fully live the only moment that truly exists, the eternal now. Because if time is a construct of the mind, then the conscious mind can reshape it. If past, present, and future all exist together in a unified field, then your awareness can navigate that field with intention and purpose. The most powerful way to apply this understanding is through conscious manifestation, not by forcing the future, but by recognizing that what you want to create already exists as potential. Your role is simply to align with that reality, to vibrate with it. Einstein never finished his unified field theory mathematically. but maybe he completed it on another level. In those moments of deep intuition when the veil between dimensions thinned, maybe he understood that the final unification wasn't an equation but a state of consciousness, and that state is your birthright, your heritage. It's where you can create, not by battling time, but by rising above it, not by chasing the future, but by recognizing it's already here, waiting for you to activate it with your focused attention. When Einstein died, he left behind notebooks filled with unfinished equations. But maybe the true conclusion of his work wasn't meant to be written in math, but lived as experience. Maybe you, reading these words now, are part of continuing that work. Because if time is relative to consciousness, then evolving consciousness is the key to moving beyond time's limits. And if all moments exist in the eternal now, your awakening isn't something waiting in the future. It's happening right now, across all time at once. Einstein knew this. The real revolution wasn't in his equations, but in what they revealed about reality's nature. And that reality is far more fluid, more flexible, more shaped by consciousness than our ordinary minds can grasp. So when you feel stuck in time, weighed down by the past, or worried about the future, remember Einstein's words. The difference between past, present, and future is only an illusion. And in that understanding, find your freedom. Because when time shows itself for what it really is, a dimension of experience, not a prison, your creative power breaks free. And while science keeps exploring space-time's mysteries, you can start right here, right now, exploring what it means to live from that freeing truth, creating from the unified field where every moment exists together, where your consciousness is all you need to navigate the dimensions of possibility. Because if we understand that time exists inside us, not the other way around, then it's time to explore how this insight reveals the missing piece, the incomplete formula that Einstein sought until his last breath. Chapter 6. The Incomplete Formula. What was missing was not an equation, but consciousness. Rain pounded against the windows of the small Princeton study. Einstein, now older, with his signature wild white hair, stood still before a blackboard covered in symbols and equations. His eyes, tired but still sharp, looked at what anyone else would see as an overwhelming mess of advanced math. To him, though, it was the unfinished map of the universe's deepest workings, 30 years of searching, 30 years spent trying to complete the cosmic puzzle he started with his theories of relativity. The unified field theory, his obsession, his scientific holy grail, still slipped through his grasp. Something fundamental was missing, and in the quiet of that rainy afternoon, Einstein may have understood for the first time that what was missing couldn't be chalked on a board. We can't solve problems with the same kind of thinking that created them, he had written years earlier. Words now carrying a deeper meaning than ever. What if the theory of everything, the equation uniting all forces in the universe, couldn't be finished because it was missing an element science refuses to acknowledge? Official history tells us that Einstein failed in his quest for the unified field theory. Textbooks note that he died leaving behind unfinished work, an unfulfilled scientific promise. What they don't reveal is what he truly discovered in those final years of quiet reflection. In the pages of his private notebooks and in close conversations with trusted colleagues, Einstein began to express a revolutionary intuition that consciousness itself was the missing piece in his equations. Quantum measurement, he confessed to Niels Bohr during a walk through Princeton's campus gardens, seems to require an observer. But who watches the observer? Where does this chain end? This simple question held both a scientific and spiritual revolution. Quantum physics showed that subatomic reality behaves differently when observed. Particles exist in states of possibility, not as fixed objects, until they are measured, observed, perceived. Einstein, who had first resisted these ideas with his famous line, "God does not play dice," now sensed something bigger. Maybe God doesn't play dice but invites consciousness to join the game of creation. Think about what this means. If consciousness, your consciousness, affects the fundamental behavior of matter, then you're no longer just a passive observer of the universe, but an active co-creator. The line between observer and observed fades, revealing a unity that Einstein began to see as the true nature of the unified field. In 1951, 4 years before he died, Einstein wrote to his friend Michel Besso, "I've come to believe that physics will need a whole new language to describe reality. The math we've used so far might not be enough to capture everything that exists. What kind of language could include not just physical forces, but also the consciousness that perceives, and maybe even influences them?" Einstein never published these thoughts. He knew he was stepping into a territory that conventional science wasn't ready for, a place where physics and metaphysics, science and spirituality start to blur. Yet decades later, notebooks found in a forgotten trunk in his Princeton attic reveal strange diagrams, mathematical equations mixed with symbols like Eastern mandalas, alongside notes like, "Consciousness isn't just a product of matter, it's more fundamental than matter." That intuition, quietly explored in his final years, now finds support at the forefront of quantum physics. Physicists like Roger Penrose, John Wheeler, Amit Goswami, and even David Bohm have suggested that consciousness might be a fundamental feature of the universe, not just a byproduct of brain activity. What Einstein began to grasp, and what mystics have known for thousands of years, is that reality isn't something out there, independent of us. It's a field of possibilities shaped through interaction with consciousness. Pause and feel the weight of this insight. Everything you've been taught about a mechanical, predictable, objective universe separate from you is only a partial truth. A useful approximation, like Newtonian physics, which perfectly describes planets but breaks down at the quantum or relativistic scale. The deeper reality, one Einstein nearly touched late in life, is that the formula was incomplete because it tried to leave out the mathematician who wrote it. It tried to separate the dancer from the dance, the song from the singer. Physics seeks to uncover the laws of an objective universe, he wrote in a notebook. But what if the objective universe isn't fully objective? If, in some fundamental way, it includes the subject who studies it? This question points to a revolutionary idea. What was missing from the unified field theory wasn't another variable, or unknown constant, or extra term. It was consciousness itself. The observer, you. The true unified field, the one Einstein pursued so tirelessly, exists not just in abstract math, but in that mysterious place where matter and mind meet, where physics and consciousness intertwine. Can you see now why this manuscript was banned? Not because it contained dangerous secrets or apocalyptic formulas, but because it challenges the foundation of materialistic science. It suggests that the divide between science and spirituality, matter and consciousness, object and subject, is as much an illusion as the linear time explored in the previous chapter. If Einstein had published these ideas back then, he would have been ridiculed. Even today, despite quantum physics confirming many of these intuitions, there's still resistance to fully accepting the role of consciousness in reality's structure. To accept consciousness as integral to the unified field means realizing we're not just uncovering universal laws, we're part of its ongoing creation. It means the divide between science and spirituality is artificial. Your inner world, your thoughts, feelings, beliefs, intentions, is not a byproduct of matter, but a fundamental part of reality. Einstein sensed this while gazing at stars from his Princeton backyard. "The most incomprehensible thing about the universe," he said, "is that it is comprehensible." A profound paradox. How could a mind born, according to science, from random material processes understand the cosmos's mathematical laws unless mind and cosmos aren't separate, unless consciousness and matter are two sides of the same reality, unless observer and observed are part of one unified field? This understanding has deep practical meaning for your life. If consciousness is part of the unified field, then your inner state, your thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and intentions, is constantly interacting with the outside world, subtly shaping and co-creating reality. No wonder that in his later years Einstein immersed himself in contemplative traditions that explored consciousness for millennia. "Intuition is a sacred gift, and the rational mind its faithful servant," he wrote. "We've built a society that honors the servant and forgets the gift. That gift, intuition, is what lets you directly perceive the underlying unity, the unified field that includes both mind and matter. It's the tool through which you can experience what Einstein tried to express mathematically: the fundamental connectedness of all things. Now try this simple exercise. Close your eyes and notice your breath. Feel the air flowing in and out of your body. Where does the air end and you begin? In that very act of breathing, can you sense the blurred boundary where the world and the self merge into one? This simple practice reveals a deep truth. The boundaries we see are mental constructs, not absolute realities. The same goes for the divide between observer and observed, consciousness and matter, you and the unified field. Einstein understood this during an experience he rarely spoke about. In 1949, while seriously ill, he had what might be called a mystical experience. Later, he confided to his assistant Helen Dukas, "For a moment I felt that no separation existed, that the universe and I were one. I can't put it into mathematical terms, but it was more real than any equation I've ever written." This direct experience of unity is what mystical traditions call enlightenment, awakening, or samadhi, the lived reality of the unified field, not just an intellectual idea. Here lies the secret Einstein began to sense. The unified field theory can't be finished only on a blackboard. It's not just a formula to write down, but a reality to experience. It requires both advanced math and an expanded consciousness that can directly perceive the underlying unity. The most important equation, Einstein wrote in a little-known note, is the one relating the observer to the observed. And that equation may not be expressible in conventional math symbols. Does this mean Einstein gave up science for mysticism? Not at all. It means he realized true unification has to include both science that recognizes consciousness and spirituality that respects intellectual rigor. Science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind, he famously said. We might now say, physics that ignores consciousness is incomplete, and spirituality that ignores physics is disconnected. The unified field Einstein sought is that whole reality embracing both nature's laws and the consciousness that perceives them. It can't be fully understood by mind or mystic insight alone, but only by combining both, and that's where you, the reader of this manuscript, come in. What Einstein couldn't finish with formulas might be realized through the expansion of human consciousness, your consciousness. Imagine each person awakening to this unity adds a crucial piece to the unified field theory Einstein left unfinished, not on paper but in reality itself, through the transformation of their own awareness. Einstein died on April 18, 1955. His last words, spoken in German, were lost because his nurse didn't understand the language. We do know that on his desk lay pages of calculations, attempts to finish the theory he'd chased for decades. What official history leaves out is that alongside those equations was a small notebook of personal reflections. On its last page, written in his shaky hand during his final days, appeared one sentence. Perhaps the theory cannot be completed because the theory itself must include the theorist, not the other way around. This final insight points to the core of our exploration. The true unified field theory can't leave out consciousness, because consciousness is an essential part of the field. It's not just a byproduct or accident. It's a foundational aspect of reality. If that's true, then the evolution of human consciousness, your inner growth, is inseparable from the evolution of the cosmos. Your awakening, your expansion, your realization of this underlying unity isn't just a personal journey, but a vital contribution to completing the unified field. In moments of clarity, Einstein glimpsed this truth, but didn't have time to fully express it, to weave it into his science, or to share it with the world. Still, he left seeds, clues now blooming where cutting-edge quantum physics meets contemplative traditions. Physicists like David Bohm have proposed models of the universe as an unbroken whole, where mind and matter are illusions of separation. Neurobiologists like Francisco Varela have shown how consciousness and the material world co-create each other. Philosophers like Thomas Nagel argue that any complete theory of the universe must include consciousness as a fundamental, irreducible part. All are expanding on the revolutionary intuition Einstein began. The formula was incomplete because it left out consciousness. Now you hold that understanding not just as an abstract theory, but as an invitation to direct experience. An invitation to realize that you are an inseparable part of the unified field, that your consciousness is always co-creating reality, and that the line between observer and observed is ultimately fluid and illusory. This insight doesn't distance you from science. It helps you integrate it into a fuller vision. It doesn't separate you from the physical world. It reveals your deep connection to it. It doesn't deny physical laws. It shows how consciousness and those laws are two sides of the same underlying reality. In the twilight of his life, Einstein looked beyond equations to perceive this whole truth. His deepest legacy isn't just his brilliant formulas, but this barely voiced insight. True unification must include the unifier. The complete field embraces both the cosmos and the consciousness that contemplates it. So what was missing wasn't a math variable, but the recognition that you, the observer, are part of the equation, that your consciousness isn't separate from the unified field but a living expression of it, and that the theory of everything in its fullest form can't be written only with math because it includes the lived experience of consciousness. This is the revolutionary invitation Einstein sensed and now offers you. To realize the unified field isn't something out there to discover, but something to be lived in your own experience. That unity isn't just an idea, but a reality to be embodied. When you live from this truth, something extraordinary happens. Your relationship with reality transforms. You're no longer just a passive observer in a mechanical universe, but an active participant in a living, intelligent, interconnected cosmos. Einstein expressed this beautifully in one of his last notes. Maybe we're not searching for the theory of everything, but experiencing the everything that comes before any theory. With that understanding, we're ready for the next step. Discovering how you, as a conscious expression of the unified field, can actively take part in the creative dance of the cosmos. Because if consciousness is part of the cosmic equation, then the ultimate experiment doesn't happen in a lab somewhere out there. It happens in the lab of your own being. Chapter 7. The Final Experiment. You are the equation. You are the field. There's a little-known story about Einstein's final days. While lying in his hospital bed in Princeton, weakened by the aneurysm that would soon take his life, he experienced a remarkable moment of clarity. When his doctor came into the room, he found Einstein smiling peacefully, gazing out the window at the spring sky. "What do you see, Professor?" the doctor asked. With a spark in his eyes that belied his frail body, Einstein replied, "I see that I was never searching for anything outside." Then, with a gentle gesture, he pointed to his chest. We may never know if this exchange happened exactly like that, but we do know that in his final years, Einstein began to realize the true theory of everything couldn't be purely mathematical, that it had to include the mathematician, that it had to embrace consciousness itself. This final insight, this revolutionary shift turning scientific pursuit into an inner journey, reveals the key to the ultimate experiment, the most transcendent of all. You are that experiment. Throughout this manuscript, we've followed Einstein's path from physics to the edge of a broader understanding, one that sees consciousness as an essential part of the unified field. We've explored how thought shapes reality, how everything is woven into an inseparable fabric of conscious energy, and how the reality we perceive partly springs from our own minds. We've seen how the universe responds through meaningful coincidences when we align with the field, and how time itself is more of a mental construct than an absolute fact. We've learned that the theory Einstein sought was incomplete because it missed a crucial element: consciousness itself, the observer who can't be separated from the observed. And now, in this final chapter, we arrive at the ultimate revelation. You are not just a passive witness to this knowledge. You are its living embodiment. Think about it. What is an experiment but a question posed to the universe, a structured way of letting reality reveal its secrets? The greatest experiments are simple and elegant, yet revolutionary in what they show us. And the most elegant, most revolutionary, most transformative of all is this. What happens when a person consciously recognizes they are not separate from the unified field, but a unique expression of it? What happens when you stop seeing your consciousness as trapped inside your body, and instead start experiencing your body, thoughts, and emotions as things arising within your consciousness? What do you discover when you realize, not as a concept, but as a lived experience, that you are the field observing itself? This is the experiment you're already conducting as you read these words, and it will keep unfolding with every moment of your life once this understanding takes root. Einstein sensed this in his last years when he wrote in a personal notebook, "Maybe the question isn't how the universe works, but how the universe experiences itself through us." This insight goes far beyond traditional physics, but deeply resonates with the most profound contemplative traditions, pointing clearly to the true nature of the final experiment. Recognizing your essential oneness with the unified field. Pause now and feel the depth of this truth. It's not an abstract idea. It's the most intimate reality of your being. It's what you are before any identity, before any personal history, even before the thoughts that arise in your mind. From this awareness, something extraordinary begins to happen. Your whole life becomes a sacred lab where the unified field experiences itself through you as you. Einstein never fully expressed this in his scientific papers, maybe because science at the time wasn't ready to include consciousness, or because he himself was just awakening to this truth, or simply because he knew that such understanding can't be fully captured with equations and theories, but must be directly experienced. What we do know is that in his later years, he bridged the gap between science and spirituality, intellect and intuition. just before he died, he wrote in a letter, "The most beautiful experience we can have is the mysterious. It is the fundamental emotion that stands at the cradle of true art and true science." The mysterious he referred to isn't just the unknown waiting to be discovered. It's the deeply inexplicable quality of being itself, the consciousness that we are. It's the profound wonder at the fact that we exist, that we experience, that we simply are. And in that wonder, in that openness to mystery, we become the final experiment, not something we do, but what we are. Imagine for a moment what might have happened if Einstein had followed this thread further. If he had connected the equations of physics with the direct experience of consciousness. If he had created not just a theory of everything, but a practice of everything. A path for directly realizing our unity with the field. That path exists. Mystics, sages, and seekers have walked it throughout history. And now it's offered to you. Not as a doctrine to believe, but as an experiment to try in the lab of your own life. The heart of this experiment is simple, though its implications are revolutionary. Realize that your true self is not the content of your experience, your thoughts, emotions, sensations, or perceptions, but the consciousness in which all of that appears. See how the world you perceive is inseparable from the consciousness that perceives it. Discover that you're not just in the field. You are the field experiencing itself, here and now, in this unique form of energy and awareness. This isn't an experiment you do once and finish. It's an ongoing awakening, a moment-by-moment reminder of your true nature, a constant invitation to live from this understanding. And when you start living from this place, something extraordinary happens. Artificial divisions begin to fade away. The separation between inside and outside, self and other, human and cosmos reveals itself for what it really is. A helpful but limited mental construct, not an absolute truth. Einstein captured this clearly during one of his most lucid moments. A human being is part of a whole, which we call the universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings, as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This optical delusion is exactly what the final experiment transcends, not by denying the world of forms and differences, but by recognizing that those forms and differences are expressions of a single underlying reality, the unified field that you are. Now, do you see why this manuscript was suppressed? Not because it contained dangerous formulas or apocalyptic secrets, but because it invites a revolution of consciousness that goes beyond the usual boundaries of science, religion, and philosophy. A revolution that starts with you, right here, right now. Einstein, in his moments of deepest clarity, caught a glimpse of this revolution's horizon. He didn't have time to finish the journey in his lifetime, but he left behind clues, an unfinished map, pointing to unexplored territories of consciousness. And now that map is in your hands, not as a sacred text to worship, but as an invitation to continue the experiment, to discover through your own direct experience that you are far bigger, deeper, and more mysterious than you have been conditioned to believe. At its core, Einstein's forbidden manuscript isn't just a historical document. It's a mirror reflecting your true nature. It's a finger pointing toward the moon of your essential being. It's a door opening to the recognition that you are the equation. You are the field. And with this recognition, the final experiment is both complete and just beginning. Because each moment is a fresh opportunity for the unified field to experience itself through you as you. This is the truth Einstein sensed near the end of his life. A realization beyond even his brilliant scientific theories. Separation is an illusion. Unity is the fundamental reality, and you, at your deepest core, are that self-aware unity. There's nothing more to say. nothing more to explain. What remains is the living experiment that is you, discovering moment by moment what it means to be the unified field in human form, what it means to be the cosmos experiencing itself, what it means to be the consciousness that contains all things. The manuscript ends here, but the experiment goes on, always has. And now, with this awakened understanding inside you, it continues in a new way. More conscious, more intentional, more aligned with your true nature. You are the equation, you are the field, you are the final experiment, and you always have been.